Hey guys, it's Hunt for Games, and welcome back to another Hunt for Hardware segment. I haven't done one of these in a long time, but a lot of really cool stuff is happening in the gaming hardware space. I'm going to try and get back into these a little more regularly. Let's get right into the excitement of the week. The Project Scorpio specs were released. So Project Scorpio, for those of you who don't remember or don't know, is the next Xbox One iteration by Microsoft. And we're working on it, teasing it, saying it's going to be the most powerful console ever, and then obviously the PS4 Pro was announced and released late last year. So before we get into the specs, let me just remind, these are pretty informal videos I'm putting together. A lot of it, I'm just reading over some of the specs that were announced, depending on the situation, and going over my thoughts, what it means for us, what it means for the consumers, what it means for the new stuff. It could be different for each thing. For this one, I was looking at two sites I'm going to list below in the description. GameSpot and both GameSpot and ARS Technica put together some really awesome charts comparing the specs of various PS4, Xbox One, the consoles, what we know, what we don't know. And I was kind of glancing at those to get a visual for what I'm talking about in this video. So if you want to look at those down below, I've included the links. Just really nice visual charts. I'm a visual person. So, some things we do know, some things we don't. Let's get right into what we do know to start, and then we'll get to what we don't at the end. So first of all, the CPU. What kind of upgrade have we got here for the CPU in the Project Scorpio? So it looks like it's been bumped from 1.75 to 2.3 gigahertz. For comparison, the PS4 went from 1.6 to 2.1 in its Pro update. The CPU is not a new architecture. It's not AMD Ryzen, which was just released like a month ago. It's still the Jaguar CPU that Xbox One had before. For better or worse, it's probably easier to code for with the same architecture in both systems. But some people were excited to see a new architecture. I, for one, don't think this is important. I think it's more important that it retains the same architecture for easy update purposes. And cross compatibility and everything like that. What do we got with the GPU? So the graphics processing unit, the frequencies and the number of compute units are all over the place for all these consoles. So I'm going to throw out their claimed teraflops. Let it be known that teraflops is not the end-all be-all for the power, the actual output in real-life scenarios for a graphics processing unit GPU. But it'll do to kind of compare what we have now. We still don't know a lot. So the original Xbox One had 1.3 teraflops of performance. The One S was slightly more. The new Scorpio project has 6 teraflops. They're claiming 6 teraflops. That's huge. I looked up my 980 Ti, which was a $700 processor, or graphics card, year and a half ago, was like 5.6. That thing is a monster. So if it really, that sets a pretty high baseline for what we're talking about. For comparison, the PS4 was capable of 1.84 teraflops, and the PS4 Pro can push 4.2. So, the 4.2 is much closer to that 6 that Xbox One Scorpio, or whatever it's going to be called, is claiming, but, still a discrepancy there. So just glancing at the numbers, the Scorpio is clearly winning in this department, although they're claiming that this is going to allow them to output true 4K 60 frames per second games on this console. I'm surprised by this because that's a struggle still for even my computer, and I have a pretty high-end computer, and 4K 60 frames per second gaming on most modern games is still kind of a pipe dream. So I thought about that more, and they've been saying that all Xbox One games, all Xbox 360 games that are backwards compatible right now in the Xbox One are going to work on the Xbox One Scorpio project. So I'm wondering if what they're saying is games running at the settings they're currently running at on the Xbox One, which compared to their PC variants, it's been said that usually it's a low to medium graphics settings for the PC version of that game. If you run at those settings at 4K, would you get 60 frames per second on this unit? Maybe. I haven't really tried to run a lot of my games at 4K on low or medium settings because that's not an experience that I'm looking for. For me, it would be a bigger benefit to, just to fly it up to high, very high, ultra settings before putting it at 4K. But I don't know how they're going to handle that. Let me scroll down in these notes a little bit. I still think it's going to be a stretch, but maybe that'll work that way. So we'll have to see. I'd love to see them offer the options for you to change different settings like that. Not even just say is it 4K or 1080, which they've already stated they should be allowed to. You should be able to do for any game. But also say I'd rather have 1080p, not super scale, but 1080p with better shadows and ambient occlusion and all that kind of stuff. But that's more PC stuff. And although the Xbox One hardware is essentially a Microsoft 10 PC, even the software that's running it, It's up to the developers whether or not they want to include that kind of experience in a console game or keep it more streamlined for, console users, which generally kind of don't really like that kind of experience. But I don't know. I'm kind of babbling now. I'd love to see it, but I love that kind of flexibility. So what about RAM? That's enough about the graphics processing unit. It's clearly a powerful GPU. Whether or not that in turn translates to the performance gains that they're suggesting, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, it's kind of hard to compare to what we're used to. It's gotten like 40 compute units that are all running at like 1100 megahertz. And I mean, that sounds like crazy, but it's hard to compare that to the GPUs as we know. Moving on. So, RAM. There's a bump from 8 to 12 gigabytes of RAM, which is a huge deal considering that on Xbox, a portion of the RAM is saved for general console use, which up until now has been pretty high. And that's going to remain. Currently, 3 of the 8 gigabytes of RAM available on the Xbox One and the One S will be used for just general console Xbox One running. On the Scorpio, it's going to be 4 gigabytes out of the 12 that are available, so leaving you with a solid 8 gigabytes of RAM. The memory bandwidth is also crazy high at 326 gigabytes per second compared to just over 200 for the original Xbox One S, which is similar, One or One S, which is similar to the PS4 around there. Just for comparison, that's higher than the GTX 1080, which is currently, and the standard line of graphics cards, like the most powerful graphics card if you don't get into the 1080 Ti and then Titan X nonsense. This could be a big factor for its ability to push out 4K, for true 4K games, but we'll have to wait and see if that is in fact one of the reasons that they're claiming it's capable of doing this. I should say, I keep saying like I have many doubts. They did run a Forza Tech demo running at 4K to 60 frames per second. It wasn't like Forza Horizon 3. It was a Forza Tech demo. So I think it was an older game. I don't think it was the new engine. Anyways, I'm still not quite buying it, or there are going to be caveats that they haven't quite mentioned yet. But that's what they're claiming. So I can't. That's what they claim. And they did have a game sort of technical demo running at 4K 60. With only, in the technical demo, it was only using 70% of the total resources, which is pretty nuts. I mean, that's impressive. So we'll have to see what it's capable of. But moving on, more on that in a little bit. Let's get back to the RAM. So PS4, on the other hand, didn't increase the RAM at all with the Pro. It had 8 gigabytes, gigabytes. It had 8 gigabytes of DDR5 in the PS4 standard, and kept that for the PS4 Pro with 8 gigabytes DDR5. Now, I should note that Xbox is jumping from DDR3 to DDR5 with the Scorpio, which could be a substantial improvement. DDR5 is much faster if they take advantage of that enhanced speed. So that's good news. Let's get into a little bit away from the technical stuff here, just some of the other things that come with this console. So, biggest win here I can see is that the Scorpio offers a 4K Blu-ray drive. That's awesome. It was announced as everyone kept saying one of the biggest misses of the PS4 Pro was that it didn't have a 4K Blu-ray drive. It's a 4K device, supposedly, but doesn't offer that, and that's a big miss. It's not something I really would have taken advantage of. I don't even have a 4K TV yet, but if I ever get one and I get a 4K Blu-ray disc, I'm gonna be a little annoyed that my PS4 Pro can't play those movies. But so that's good news for Xbox One fans. Also, I mentioned this briefly in the video yesterday, but they're claiming we'll be able to record gameplay at 4K, 60 frames per second DVR of the games you're playing. This is huge, because currently 4K, 60 frames per second capture cards aren't really a thing. They're out there, but they're either very expensive or have caveats or only do 30 frames per second. 4K, 60 frames per second on an Xbox device, especially if it records gameplay of the games the Xbox is playing, but also could record pass-through. Similarly, right now you can plug in like a PS4 or it's supposed to be like a cable device, and then play all that through your Xbox One. If you could do that with the PS4 Pro at 4K or even your PC at 4K, pass it through the Xbox One S, or Xbox One Scorpio, and record that, even if it ends up being $600, that's a decent solution for a capture card for your games. That's a really unusual situation that I've kind of thought of, but that's cool. 4K 60 frames per second capture card that's pretty neat. that's going to put them a bit ahead some of the competition in terms of capturing ability. So moving on. What it looks like, how quiet it is, how much snappier the interface is with the enhanced CPU speed, how does it just feel, what are the dimensions? I think we have weight maybe. We just still don't know a lot of these details. They haven't really released any of that. All the media for this announcement was like a picture of the chip, and you know that they must still be deciding when they're going to release that information. If like the best picture they can have is of a processor, and nobody gets excited about that. Like, I mean, I do, and I guess anybody who's watching this might be getting excited about that. But for the general public, isn't going to be like, oh, it's a beautiful processor. Hard drive size, we still don't know. I think minimum 1 terabyte is likely. I'd be surprised if they put a 500 gigabyte hard drive on the Project Scorpio, most powerful console ever. I can't see them going lower than 1 terabyte, but I've been proved wrong before. Considering the Xbox One can have up to 2 terabytes, I'd be surprised if that wasn't even an option for you to buy. I'd also be surprised if that's like the base model, but who knows? Maybe that's a way that they can say, how much it's really worth it. So that's a lot of cool stuff about Project Scorpio that we didn't know. The specs seem to support that they weren't lying, that this is going to be the most powerful console in existence for the time being. Having said that, we still don't know. The most important thing that I've always wanted to know about this is price. My PC is an incredibly powerful PC, but I don't go around saying like, screw, PS4 because of my PC, because my PC was really expensive. Like the PS4 is a $300 to $400 device, depending on how much which version you buy. And that's one of the reasons it's so popular. The Xbox One matches that pretty closely. The Xbox Scorpio, whatever they're going to call it, if it's like $700, I don't think it's going to do well. It's a really cool offering, and I think some people will be interested in it. The people that really want improved graphics, don't want the hassle of a PC, just don't want all that. They only play on Xbox. They're only ever going to play on Xbox with all their friends. Although I would argue that Microsoft is doing all sorts of stuff for crossplay with PC now. So half the time, you can just play the games. That's my struggle right now. So I have an Xbox One, but all the new games are coming out also on PC, and there's no reason for me not to play them on that when I can still even play with my little brother on his Xbox while I'm on PC. It's a really cool functionality, but it does kind of draw me away from the Xbox One. And now they're releasing a higher quality, stronger Xbox One that's going to cost more, but still seems a lot like a PC. I don't know. That's my own internal battle. Point is, so big news. It's big news for the the Xbox community, the PlayStation community, the PC community. It's big news for gamers in general, because this is clearly a high-end device. Now, what it ends up being capable of, does it actually change the fact that Xbox One sales have been behind PlayStation? Will this turn them around? Will it actually improve those sales? I worry it won't. I think there's going to be a market for it. I don't know if it's going to be a huge market. I think it'll depend a lot on price. If it's in the $500 range, that might even still be too high. With the PS4 Pro at $400, while people will see, viewers like you and I are going to look at that and say like, oh, the Xbox One probably has another $100 worth of power, if it ends up having $100 worth of power over the PS4 Pro. General consumers might not even, they might just see two 4K devices. One of them is $400, one of them $500. And right now, especially this year so far, it looks like the PS4 has much stronger exclusives. So I think those drive purchases a lot more than overall console power. But I'm not an analyst of sales. I don't know if that's the case. We'll see. I think a lot of it will come down to marketing and price. It's going to be price. If it's $600, I think they're going to struggle to sell this, even if it is the most powerful thing ever out there. I think it's getting into the realm where people are like, I would just buy a computer, and if you could buy a computer, you can have all that flexibility and upgrade it whenever you want. If you're going to buy something cheaper, there's a cheaper Xbox One. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I can't wait to see how they price it. But it clearly is a huge boost in what the Xbox One can do. I can't wait to see how that translates to actual game performance on the console. I want to see it running. I want to see the box. Did they make it look prettier? The Xbox One is kind of ugly. All cool stuff. But I'll link the you know, the different sites that I was pulling these specs from down below. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the Xbox One Scorpio project. I can't wait to see what they name it, so I can stop calling it the Scorpio project, Xbox One Scorpio. Interesting stuff. I'm more confused than ever. I'm so confused because I really thought they were going to release this thing and it was going to be shit. I thought it was either going to be $800, which it very well may be. We'll see, or utter crap. And it looks like the hardware that's in it isn't crap. It's better than the PS4 Pro by a decent margin. I don't know. And ultimately, will the consumers even care? Will the consumers care that it's a more powerful device if when they look at the PS4 Pro when it's fake 4K games, for instance, Horizon Zero Dawn, and it's like, you know, translated 4K next to an Xbox One game at true 4K, are they going to look at the two and say, like, I need that Xbox One? We won't know until we can see them side by side, until we, you know, see the pricing and everything. That I'm babbling on. I'm saying the same things over and over again. Thanks for sticking around for Hunt for Hardware. I'm going to try and do these more often, maybe a couple times a month. I really love talking about this stuff. I just kind of stopped for a little while because I was trying to keep up with other types of videos. But I'm just going to squeeze this one in and keep going with the other videos anyway. Which is why this has been rambling, because it's all notes and not scripted. Dangerous. But seriously, thanks guys for sticking around. Thanks for dealing with Floofer, who has escaped into the back realms of the room. I'll see you guys next week. Remember, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. But mostly comment. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts on the Project Scorpio. What do you guys think going on? So I'll see you guys next week. Thanks. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, you should totally think about subscribing. I've got videos coming out twice a week, and if you like this one, there's at least a chance you'll like some of the others that are very similar to this, so live dangerously. Let me know what you guys thought about the video in the comments and other videos you'd like to see. And finally, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Huntin for Games to keep up with all the latest stuff. See ya.